In example 11, we're going to make a histogram from the frequency distribution we made in example 10. And so histogram is basically a bar graph where in the horizontal scale along the bottom is that numerical scale. So we don't want to have gaps in between our bars. We can also include a relative frequency axis if we like, but the vertical axis will indicate the frequency. We're going to make a histogram with a vertical axis that represents the frequency, and then we can actually make another vertical axis on the other side with the relative frequency. So this histogram, first of all, we have our title, 50 exam scores. And our horizontal axis along the bottom is going to just list the numerical axis, the values that our data fall between. Our lowest score up here, let's see, we went from our lowest class was 35 to 45, and it went all the way up to 95 to 105. So it's these classes that I'm going to use, and each of these classes will end up being a bar in this histogram. So have a little break here, and then it's 35, 45, 55, and so on. And then on this axis we'll have the frequency. And our frequencies went up as high as, I guess 13 is the largest number there. So maybe I'll go up by 5s and along my vertical axis go up to 15. So the 35 to 45, I'm going to keep referring back to our table here, had a frequency of 2, and so that means I'm going to draw this bar with a height of 2, goes from 35 to 45. The 45 to 55 also had a frequency of 2. 55 to 65 had a frequency of 7. 65 to 75 had a frequency of 13. 75 to 85 had a frequency of 11, as did the 85 to 95. And our last interval, our last class, 95 to 105, had a frequency of 4. And there is a histogram that represents the frequency distribution we just made. Now, we said we also wanted to include a relative frequency, and we can do that fairly easily just by including an additional vertical scale, because the relative frequency and the frequency themselves move at the same rate. There's sort of a one-to-one correspondence. And so I can make the same scale on this side. And the frequency of 5 corresponds to let's see, 5 out of 50 is 1/10 or 0.1. 10 out of 50 is 0.2. And 15 out of 50 is 0.3. And then I'll make the rest of these marks here. And each one of these little marks represents a 0.02 to get us up to 0.1 and 5 hash marks. And so this actually represents, all we have to do is make this scale, and now there's the relative frequency. This first, we take a look at this first interval from 35 to 45 here. It had a frequency of 4 and had a relative frequency of 0.04, and that corresponds to the height at which this resides in our histogram.